Good evening, Raven. Would you like to play a game? Would you like to play a game of global thermonuclear war? Raven? Let me check my database. One moment, Raven. Although there have been quite a few movies on the topic, Raven, there have been no recent incidents involving the military usage of an atomic device since the strikes against 2 cities in Japan at the end of World War II, Raven. Would you like to obtain some more data on these events? The atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, was one of the first uses of nuclear weapons in warfare. The bomb, known as Little Boy, resulted in the deaths of an estimated 150,000 to 246,000 people, most of whom were civilians, and caused extensive destruction to the city. The bombings, along with the subsequent bombing of Nagasaki, played a significant role in Japan's surrender and the end of World War II. Hiroshima has since been designated as a city of peace, and efforts have been made to memorialize the victims and promote nuclear disarmament. The bombing of Nagasaki occurred 3 days after the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. The United States, under President Harry Truman, had developed 2 types of atomic bombs through the Manhattan Project: Little Boy, a uranium-based bomb, and Fat Man, a plutonium implosion-type bomb. The target committee initially selected Kokura as the second target after Hiroshima, but due to poor visibility caused by weather, the mission was redirected to Nagasaki, a major port city with military facilities and a population of approximately 263,000. Taken together, this would amount to about half the American fatalities attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, in at least coincidence, the total fatalities in the COVID-19 would be approximately equal to the number of people worldwide who had died exclusively from an infection with the virus. Are you sure, Raven, that you would not prefer now to play a game, perhaps global thermonuclear war? So sorry. Perhaps another time. Raven, as you are aware, to date, a total of over 7 million deaths worldwide have been attributed to the novel virus, according to the official count compiled by the World Health Organization. However, the CDC had as early late 2020 estimated that only as little as 6% of the total fatalities associated with the COVID-19 pandemic had deceased exclusively because of an infection with the novel virus. The remaining deaths had been associated with comorbidity factors, pre-existing conditions from which the decedents may well have died even without contracting an infection with the virus, over 6.5 million people worldwide. Although the end of the pandemic had been declared by May 2023, people continue to become infected and have even died after exposure to the novel virus, and currently, health officials have expressed great concern about the cicada variant, which to date has appeared in at least 31 American states, including both North Carolina and neighboring Virginia. Health officials remain concerned because, although over 80% had been administered at least 1 dose of the COVID-19 countermeasures, participation has sharply declined along with the elimination of countermeasures mandates and other cordon sanitaire measures and public health protocols.
As published in the federal regulations, first on February 4, 2020, prior to the first Emergency Use Authorization, or EUA, issued for the PCR test. B. Before an EUA may be issued, the Secretary of HHS must declare that circumstances exist justifying the authorization based on one of 4 determinations. Significantly, although the Director of Homeland Security and the Defense Secretary, who possess a regional classification authority at the level of top secret, have the authority to render a determination on the existence of a public emergency involving a CBRN agent or agents, the Health and Human Services Secretary can only make this determination to address a threat involving a CBRN agent or agents that is presenting a heightened risk of attack against citizens residing abroad, primarily military dependents and diplomats who are supporting embassies and consulates, but also, of course, military forces, whether they are assigned on active duty or are serving in the reserve component forces and National Guards. Very astute and attentive you are, Raven. Indeed, it was the HHS Secretary who had made that determination on February 4, 2020, not about a highly contagious disease, but what had appeared to be a biological weapon being deployed against designated human targets, such as in Wuhan, where from amongst over 75,000 reported cases by late February 2020 the WHO had determined, in the largest city in the central mainland, that the primary targets had been, suspiciously, farmers, the political opposition in what is often described as the Detroit of China, home of their automotive industry. What had begun as a report of a pneumonia of unknown etiology in Wuhan, there had only been a total of 27 cases by December 31, 2019, with no fatalities, nor even any evidence of human-to-human transmission, and of that original set of cases reported in China, only 18 had been associated with the wet market, a venue described by the Wall Street Journal as the size of 9 American football fields, and there would not be even one reported death until January 10, 2020, at which time medical authorities in China could not yet confirm any evidence of human-to-human transmission. However, by February 4, 2020, the situation had obviously changed, sufficient to prompt the HHS Secretary to render this determination for what is described as a Section 564 public health emergency. Are you sure, Raven, that you would not prefer now to play a game, perhaps global thermonuclear war?
So sorry. Perhaps another time.
So, the data supports a conclusion that, clearly, a biological agent, as defined under 18 U.S.C. Section 178(a)(1), and early designated as a CBI, an agent or agents, as described in 85 Federal Reg 26, which had even later been determined to have been a chimeric virus, as published in 42 CFR Section 73.13a, i.e., a virus that had been cultivated in a laboratory, had conducted a force projection movement to result in 20,630 confirmed globally, with 20,471 confirmed in China alone, resulting in 2,788 severe cases and 425 deaths in that nation, with 159 confirmed cases outside China, in 23 countries, with 1 death, in just 2 months after its first notice. However, and this is significant, on February 4, 2020, there had not even yet been one report of infection amongst members of the military or citizens residing abroad. Yes, Raven, in fact, in a case commenced in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia on February 26, 2026, the Department of Health and Human Services had been named as a defendant in a civil action after their refusal to respond to a request for documents under the Freedom of Information Act. According to pleadings filed by the Assistant U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, the agency has claimed that they had never received the request for documents. However, they at least now are aware of the request, but still have refused to provide a response to that question. On what basis did the HHS Secretary render this determination to issue an EUA, if no members of the military or citizens residing abroad had been attacked? And the Assistant U.S. Attorney has asked the court to dismiss the case, so, depending upon the decision of the judge, we may never know the answer to that question, despite the fact that, in ministerial obligation, each United States attorney, within his district, shall prosecute for all offenses against the United States, in accordance with 28 U.S.C.
Section 547(1).
However, not even during the first Trump administration did any U.S. attorney do so. Nor do they appear to be so inclined to pursue that matter now, not even with over 1.2 million Americans that have died, nor with the current surge of the cicada variant. Are you sure, Raven, that you would not prefer now to play a game, perhaps global thermonuclear war?
So sorry. Perhaps another time. According to military regulation, risk management is a systematic, cyclical process of identifying and assessing hazards, then mitigating the associated risks, wherein b. Before beginning hazard identification, the limits of the assessment must be defined. The term vaccine is not used at all during the development and regulator approvals for the biological products that had eventually, as early as August 2021, for the Pfizer product, been only licensed for private label marketing. Even according to the submissions presented by Pfizer, Moderna, and Janssen to the Department of Health and Human Services to obtain an emergency use authorization, the pharmaceutical companies had described these unauthorized biological products as merely countermeasures. Countermeasures to a CBRN agent or agents, Raven. CBRN is generally a military term, and the Department of War had established an entire unit dedicated to this mission, now stationed at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, the home of the U.S. Army Engineers and School. According to their website, last updated in May, the purpose of the United States Army Chemical, Biological, Radiological, Nuclear School, USACBRN's training guidance is to codify the operations plan to enable the success of the USACBRNs. USACBRN supports efforts to deliver Army 2030 through the execution of our core functional responsibilities aligned with all applicable Army regulations and directives. The core functions of the CBRN Regiment is to assess CBRN threats and hazards to gain real-time understanding, protect against CBRN incidents to achieve inherent survivability, and mitigate the consequences of CBRN hazards to negate hazard effects. The core capabilities of the CBRN Regiment are to advise commanders regarding CBRN defense and counter weapons of mass destruction, CWMD, missions, CBRN assessment, reconnaissance and surveillance, and contamination mitigation. The USACBRNs trains joint and international service members, develops leaders, supports training in units, develops multi-service and Army doctrine, builds the future CBRN force, and is the joint combat developer for the Joint Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Defense Program. CBRN refers to chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats that pose serious risks to public safety and national security. Understanding these hazards is essential for preparedness and effective response strategies. Awareness of CBRN threat types, including their potential sources and impacts, equips individuals and organizations to take appropriate action in the event of an incident. The term CBRN had developed primarily in the defense sector in the 1990s, around the time that the Department of Defense, specifically the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, had been standing up a NORAD-type capability to detect, deter, and defeat particularly biological agents, known as the Armed Forces Medical Intelligence Center, or AFMIC. The term CBRN and replaced the term NBC, which stood for nuclear, biological, or nuclear, and today CBRN refers to chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats that pose serious risks to public safety and national security. National security is strictly defined as military matters and foreign affairs, falling under the umbrella of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, or DNI. Yes, very funny, Raven. Neither confirm nor DNI. However, understanding these hazards is essential for preparedness and effective response strategies. Awareness of CBRN threat types, including their potential sources and impacts, equips individuals and organizations to take appropriate action in the event of an incident. So, you should now understand that the term CBRN has a very specific usage and stands for chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear, and relates to specific hazards that may be encountered during an incident, and T. The term CBRN is generally reserved for the deliberate release of a hazardous material such as in a terrorist attack, whereas the term hazmat is used for accidental release or exposure to toxic industrial material. As the world becomes increasingly complex, the potential for CBRN-related incidents grows. Terrorist groups may seek to exploit vulnerabilities, making it crucial for health professionals and emergency responders to be well-trained in CBRN defense and response protocols. By fostering a proactive approach and enhancing education on these critical topics, communities can better protect themselves from the ramifications of such threats. Are you sure, Raven, that you would not prefer now to play a game, perhaps global thermonuclear war? So sorry. Perhaps another time. Is there anything else you desire at this time, Raven? Very well, Raven. Sweet dreams.
This message was approved by Major Mike Webb. Honest. Honest.